Now, to talk this through with us, we are joined from Cairo by Dr. Osama Al-Said, who is the editor-in-chief of Al Akhbar newspaper. And also joining us from Washington is Ginger Chapman, a lawyer and a political analyst. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining us here on Q News. Ms. Chapman, I'll start with you. The U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff has confirmed that the first phase of the Israeli withdrawal is complete. They've moved to that so-called yellow line, and the 72-hour countdown has begun. How central would you say U.S. coordination has been in ensuring that Israel adhered to this timeline?
Yeah. Well, first, Mark, thank you for having us here today, and greetings to your viewers and to your other guests, Dr. El-Said. And well, so far we have seen that American influence has been very weak. We saw that Steve Witkoff, and Trump had negotiated an agreement back in January for a ceasefire, and then negotiated another agreement in March for a ceasefire. And both of those ceasefire terms, Netanyahu and the IDF violated, because we know at that time their goal was not to get the hostages back. Hamas had offered to return all the hostages in return for IDF withdrawal or not being in Gaza, and Netanyahu turned down the return of the hostages twice, broke two ceasefires. However, what appears to be a turning point was when Israel bombed Qatar. When Israel bombed the negotiators, the Hamas negotiators in Qatar, that was a turning point for Trump. Qatar is our ally, our partner, and this was a violation of sovereignty, not to mention an international crime. So at that point, Trump appeared to get tough with Netanyahu to the extent that he is able, given the big money donors and their influence in Washington, D.C. However, now we are making progress. We know that this deal is flawed. We're only in phase one, the return of the hostages and the withdrawal of IDF. The withdrawal of the IDF, there are still a lot of terms to negotiate. And phase two, we know, is very vague, no details on timeline and specifics. Those have to be worked out. Hamas crafted a very sophisticated response to Trump's demands that they surrender or else. Hamas was able to craft a response that dealt with the phase one withdrawal of IDF, return of the hostages, and say that the phase two negotiations needed to encompass other Palestinian political groups. This was brilliant. This got us to where we are now. Now we need to take advantage of this momentum. We do know that Trump is suspicious of Netanyahu and still trying to contain him by sending the 200 troops, American troops, to Israel. We know Netanyahu does not want American troops or any other troops in Gaza because other non-IDF troops would not carry out the extent of the potential war crimes that the IDF does. So Netanyahu does not want American boots in Gaza. However, Trump is sending 200 American soldiers to Israel. This is his attempt to try to get Netanyahu to comply, because the world is aware that if this deal fails, if Netanyahu breaks another ceasefire, that the risk of regional escalation is very great at this time. And now the other danger that observers are looking at is not that Netanyahu will break the ceasefire, but that they will try the Oslo strategy of dragging out the negotiations and stalling and preventing. Keep in mind, the Oslo strategy, Oslo was a 5-year agreement. Here it is 30 years later, still trying to implement it. So there are risks ahead. And the other motivator for Trump is he did not get the Peace Prize.
Yes. Well, I will come on to that. Yeah, we'll come on to that, Ginger, in just a little moment. But I want you to bring Dr. El-Said in, if I can. Thousands of displaced Palestinians are returning to Gaza City through El Rashid Street. We've been seeing those pictures on our screens. Many of them waving Palestinian flags, some waving Egyptian flags as well. What does this moment symbolize for Palestinians after 2 years of devastation?
Well, thank you for hosting me, and my greetings to your guest and to all your viewers. Of course, what's going on in Gaza Strip is promising for millions of Palestinians suffered from horrible humanitarian catastrophe during the 2 years. Egypt exerted a lot of effort in order to reach this stance of ceasefire and to reach an agreement preserving the souls of Palestinians on their lands, which is a focal and essential point for Egyptian policy, in addition to roles played by Egypt in supporting Palestinians and Gazans in delivery aid access and hosting thousands of Gazans to receive treatment on Egyptian land. And if it wasn't for the obstacles by Israel to hinder delivery access, aid delivery access, Egypt would have supported and provided way more support to Gazans. Also, Egypt's host for the last round of negotiations and the pressure put to reach this constant coordination with Qatar and the US and Turkey led to reach this agreement that Palestinians depend on to end this war, relieving the humanitarian catastrophe, in addition to their looking aspiration to Egypt's supervision of reconstruction. Especially Egypt provided a clear, good plan to reconstruct without displacement. So flagging Egyptians flags are with their return to North Gaza and to the areas they displaced from, all symbolize the amount of appreciation Palestinians have towards Egyptian leadership and Egypt's stance. Especially the Egyptian stance didn't change during the last years, rejecting any displacement, rejecting carnage conducted by occupation, and also rejecting international silence on mass murder conducted by occupation forces. Israeli troops all are praised stances reflected in what happened with flagging Egyptians' flags, appreciating Egyptian stance inside Gaza.
Well, I'll come back to you, Ginger Chapman. You mentioned there that Trump has not been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize this time round, at least. And we know he's not very happy about it. That was a goal of his. But when it comes to this agreement, he must get a lot of the credit for brokering this particular deal and for what is happening on the ground right now. Would you say?
Yes, well, two items. First, we do know that Trump is still obsessed with the fact that President Obama, got his Nobel Peace Prize before he even took office. So Trump expected he might get one before he took office. The nomination period ended in January. However, this will motivate Trump to continue working towards peace. The prospect of his Nobel Peace Prize potentially being awarded next year. Also, the prospect of rebuilding Gaza. Trump is very transactional, and this is what allowed his personality to push forward a deal. And especially one of the things we note, even though Trump's cabinet is a very pro-Zionist cabinet, we saw that Trump himself is not a committed Zionist in the sense that negotiating the Palestinian prisoner release, such as Marwan Barghouti and other prisoners that have long life sentence terms. And the Biden administration very much adhered to the Israeli line of whatever Israel wanted. We know that in these negotiations with Trump, when Israel was saying we don't want to release Marwan Barghouti and these other prisoners, Trump said, hey, these are 5 guys. What's the problem? Just release them. So Trump's transactional nature and his being less wedded to Zionism is an advantage in these negotiations. The other thing is your guest, Dr. Saeed, raises the most important point that Trump had to turn to our regional partners, our Arab partners, Egypt, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and most importantly, and this happened after Israel struck Doha and tried to kill the negotiators. This is when Trump realized he had to rely on our regional partners. Egypt has played one of the most important roles. Egypt has to walk a very fine line. They are on the front lines, sharing a border with Israel and Gaza. They have to negotiate between Israel on one side and the demands of the United States on the other hand. And they have done a very remarkable job negotiating this, especially because of the added pressure when the negotiations had to be moved to Sharm el-Sheikh after the strike on Doha. Egypt has they have stood firm with not allowing the destabilization of their own country by the influx of millions of refugees, and they have put forward several proposals. Their reconstruction and rebuilding proposal from April that was not accepted then has a stronger chance now that we realize our regional partners must play a greater role, especially in the transitional government and the stabilization and rebuilding of Gaza. So this is a breakthrough for many parties. And once again, for the phase 2 section of the plan, our regional partners, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, will become more important as this plan progresses. But right now, the most important thing is stopping the killing of the Palestinians, stopping the bombing, maintaining the ceasefire, and getting the 600 trucks of food aid into Gaza because they desperately need the relief.
Indeed they do. Indeed they do. Dr. Osama Al-Saeed, I'll come to you now. Netanyahu has declared that he is fulfilling his promise to bring back the Israeli detainees. Yet, he said, in his words, the war is not over. What does he mean by this, do you think? And can we trust Israel's intentions going forward?
First of all, we have to differentiate between more than one level of Israeli discourse. There is an intention for Netanyahu to resume the war because it means his presence in the authority and avoiding accountability during the mistakes he had of the October 7th led to what Israel has faced during the last 2 years. The second point is that Israeli behaviors and Netanyahu's behavior specifically is stalking, and it was shown in the last 2 negotiations in the beginning of the year and the last year, and he managed to breach it. Of course, Netanyahu is concerned to preserve the far right coalition, and these personalities in the coalition reject ending the war and want to presume this war to liquidate the Palestinian cause. But what is different this time, there is various different pressure. There is a stance looking different by Trump on what we have seen and witnessed during the last period. So this doesn't provide chance or space to Netanyahu for stalking, and there is willingness by U.S. administration to end this war that didn't manage to achieve anything but more destruction in Gaza and destabilization, regional destabilization, and harming U.S. interests in the Middle East. Of course, Netanyahu wants resuming this war, wants to regain detainees only and to resume the war one more time. But this time, it doesn't seem that U.S. will allow him to do this, especially that the U.S. Is now sure that military solutions conducted by Israel proved its failure during the last 2 years in regaining hostages or detainees alive. So they cannot regain the detainees except by political solution. I think this time mediators are firm to pressure. U.S. Is firm to pressure Netanyahu and not allowing him to stalk or to resume the war again.
And Ginger Chapman, coming back to you, as you mentioned there, Washington has clarified that no American troops will enter Gaza. Do you think going forward that situation will be sustainable? Do you think it's going to need some outside forces to really keep the peace?
Yes. And once again, your other guest, Dr. Saeed, is correct that Netanyahu, his cabinet, Smotrich, Ben-Gvir, Fogel, Katz, that faction of the Israeli Knesset is very hostile to this deal. They are stepping up their aggressions in the West Bank, and they are saying to their people, we will not have a Palestinian state. We are not going to withdraw. They are being cornered because their situation is unsustainable. And at some point, we may need American troops on the ground in Gaza, and we may need that international force on the ground in Gaza. And this is because, regardless of what Netanyahu says, we do know that their long-term goal is no Palestinian state. Netanyahu insisted this at his United Nations speech. No Palestinian state. Israel will never withdraw their security forces from Gaza. Well, this has to change. The world knows this is an intolerable situation, and this agreement, and keep in mind that Trump's peace plan, when he put it forth, initially this was because the United Nations was about to vote on the Unifying for Peace resolution to get around America's veto in the Security Council vote. And the United Nations was talking about Chapter 7 sending in a United Nations peacekeeping force to establish the peace in Gaza. And this is why Trump realized he had to jump in with this peace plan, his 20-point plan, and move things forward to try to essentially to try to contain and help Bibi Netanyahu. And this is a very chaotic situation between the UN, the United States, Israel, our Arab partners, and the way forward is very murky, but we do have a way forward. The most important thing is that we keep the conversations going, we keep the negotiations going, and the world keeps their eyes on Gaza, because we don't know what Netanyahu and the IDF will try to get around this most current peace plan. And we need to keep the pressure up. And yes, at some point, we will need international troops. We will need an international stabilization force in there. And we will need a buffer between the people of Gaza and the IDF until we can achieve conditions on the ground for long-lasting peace and security for the people of Gaza it is very significant that the people of Gaza and Hamas did ask Trump for security guarantees. So if Trump can guarantee the security, then we can move forward with this peace plan and with the reconstruction of Gaza.
Okay, and Dr. El Sayed, I'll come to you now. Looking ahead at the day after talks, and they're involving Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, and U.S. Central Command. Is it right that Palestinians seem to have been excluded from discussions about Gaza's future, at least so far?
I don't think that this is correct because mediators are negotiating with all Palestinian parties, and this agreement is with announced consensus by Hamas and all Palestinian factions and welcomed by the Palestinian Authority. So there is no excluding of Palestinians. All Palestinians welcoming this agreement and want its success. Palestinians endured the turbulence and the suffering of this war and paid more than 60,000 martyrs and more than 200,000 injured, and others are still under the rubble, and other amounts may increased after the war. There is no hospitals working, there is no schools, there is no facilities, there is no utilities. Therefore, Palestinians are the most realizing the importance of ending the war, welcoming this agreement to end the war, and wants to see peace all across the region. In addition to this the very legitimate right of establishing a state able to meet their needs and aspirations. Therefore, I don't think that the Palestinian people were excluded. I think Palestinians were part of this indirect negotiations, and mediators um, dealt or contacted different parties, and it's expected that Egypt will host a meeting for Palestinian factions to tackle the scenarios of next period and Palestinian vision in regard to Gaza governance and it symbolizes a Palestinian voice, and to have unified Palestinian vision is which is a part of the whole picture.
And Ginger Chapman, lastly, coming to you, Trump expected to visit the Middle East this weekend. What do you think he's hoping to achieve by visiting? He wants to be there, wants the pictures. Is that right, do you think?
Yes. Well, Trump never wants to pass up an opportunity to bask in the glory, in the limelight of his accomplishments, and to promote them heavily. But it is a wonderful opportunity for Trump to travel to Egypt this weekend, be on the ground, hear firsthand from our partners, and essentially see facts on the ground. This is going to be Trump's second trip to the Middle East, and this is a monumentous occasion. It gives us hope for the future moving forward. Your other guest, Dr. Saeed, did mention that he feels the Palestinian people will be represented. Once again, this goes back to Hamas' brilliant negotiation where they said, we can negotiate phase one. We need to bring in other political parties. We need to bring in the people of Palestine, other voices, all of the political party voices, such as PFLP, the Palestinian Liberation Front, Islamic Jihad. So Hamas was very good, especially with respect to phase two, at saying we need the other Palestinian voices to make this negotiation legitimate. And for President Trump, his visit to Egypt this upcoming weekend could be the crowning glory on this achievement, which was not solely President Trump. The only way he was able to accomplish this, once again, was after the Doha strike, he relied more heavily on our regional partners such as Egypt, Qatar. So this weekend's trip could be a great opportunity for Trump and for the Middle East to showcase this accomplishment, and more importantly, to continue moving forward as a sign of hope.
Thank you very much indeed. Ginger Chapman, lawyer and political analyst, joining us from Washington, and also Dr. Osama El-Said as well, editor-in-chief from Al Akhbar newspaper. Thank you very much, both of you, for being with us here on Q News. And that brings us to the end of our special coverage for now. But stay with us, because we have special coverage all day today on this momentous weekend here in the Middle East.